Wait, I'll tell you when it's live. It's preparing.
Merry Christmas, Fran.
Okay, we are live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December 17th edition of the Washington County Committee for Community Involvement, the CCI. My name is Bruce Bartlett. I'm the chair of this group. Mary Manso is the vice chair, and everybody else are comrades in arms attempting to make public participation in land use affairs and the government, local county government in general, an effective thing. We have tonight, I don't see him yet, we have the outgoing District 3 County Commissioner Roy Rogers.
He's there. Roy R.
Roy R. There we are. So greetings, Commissioner Rogers. We don't have any particular thing to do prior to moving into your segment of the meeting. So
I think we ought to wait a couple of minutes because people are popping in like crazy right now.
Okay, well.
Bruce, I'm not quite certain why my picture's not up there. I have a black screen, and yet on my...
Well, do you want to fiddle around with it a little bit and see what you can come up with?
Do we want to do the minutes, Chair, while we're waiting?
What does do the minutes mean?
Approve the minutes.
Approve the minutes.
We do that in steering, Gretchen.
Okay.
Roy, I'm showing your camera is off. Have you tried just clicking your video?
Yeah, I just did that. I don't know why. Interesting. Huh.
Maybe your camera went out.
I don't think so.
Ika, can you see if you can see anything, any reason why he's not on cam?
It could be that the top camera is closed. Sometimes my camera is on, but I noticed the top has somehow closed.
I had problems for about 6 months where my camera wasn't working, and it turned out that my computer had done a download that didn't load properly, and so I had to unload that and reload it. So hopefully, Roy, yours is a simple solution.
Well, something changed.
Huh. Maybe I should leave and come right back if that's all right.
I would recommend that.
Give it a go.
All right.
Give it a go. Yes, this is definitely a public-driven affair. We do not have any professional support. We are grateful for the support that our staff person, Ika, provides us. There we go. We got Paul. He came on. His camera is often not working. So this is just one of the exciting things that happens in public participation meetings. I suppose it would be a good idea if I was to actually look and see what the agenda is today. Oh, we have an agenda. Okay.
Okay, Roy is back in the attendees, so he needs to be made a panelist.
Well,
same thing.
Don't see to have
Roy, we hear your dulcet tones, so we know you're there.
I'm here, but I don't see myself. I'm a blob. Interesting.
We'll just imagine you in all your handsome glory.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I'm not sure any of that's accurate, but okay.
Roy, have you tried the little button that says video down at the bottom left?
Yeah, you have.
I did.
Did it take it off?
No.
Is there still a line through the video?
There's a little arrow next to the video camera thing, and there's some choices there. You might try one of the other choices.
It
Just a
says
thought.
integrate the blur my background, choose a virtual background, which I don't choose. Integrated webcam video setting.
Video settings.
That's interesting because I use this all the time and I don't ever have a problem.
Yeah.
Did it accidentally get, your light get turned way down?
My light
It
got
couldn't be
turned.
that low.
Well, it could.
Well, I wouldn't think so, but
So the computers do have the brightness.
mhm.
That's
But why would it have changed if he doesn't change anything?
Yeah, that's a good
Well-
question. No IT people, unfortunately, to help me
Yeah.
right here.
Well,
Oh boy.
oh boy. Well, very good. We will forge ahead as we do in these meetings. We are very privileged tonight to have outgoing Commissioner Roy Rogers after 40 years, plus or minus, of public service to the county. There's been a lot of changes since 1984, with 40 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of changes. The population has at least tripled since 1984. And we have somebody here who's seen it. So we're interested, Roy, in what you think some of the county's really meaningful, positive accomplishments have been in those 40 years, rather than saying what's gone wrong. I'd like to hear you just share a few ideas about things that feel like have gone well for the county.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. Today was our last meeting for the year, meeting the board. We met and we meet on Tuesdays, and they picked today as being that day. Had the privilege of cleaning out my office, taking all my name tags off. So it was kind of an interesting meeting. Having gone through that, I had a little brief ceremony. I'm not really big on all those things, but they were insisting that we do something, so we did. But let me just start by just saying what the county looked like when I got there and what it looks like today. And you talked a bit about that. When I got there, it was about 40,000 people, or about 610 now, depending on who's counting them. We were in a situation where we were an ag community, resource community, timber community. I mean, there were Tektronix was around, Intel was just briefly there. You had Nike as well, but it didn't have the campus it has today. So we had a smattering of business. I came from the city of Tualatin. I live in Tigard today, but I was in those days in Tualatin. I was the mayor, and I was convinced by 3 other mayors to run for what I thought was 4 years, because I said I don't think I would want to do that any longer than that, because the city's relationship was really not good with the county. And it was a great amount of angst because the cities felt that they were financing a lot of the county operations. So I ran successfully against an incumbent, and the rest is history. So I've been out there 40 years. It will be that way. January 1 of 2005. I started in 1985. I was 3 terms of mayor before that, and then a bit of time. So if you're counting, please don't. It makes me about 37, I think, but maybe my math is bad. I will acknowledge that. To deal with a lot of the issues of the day, we came out with a strategic plan, and I certainly feel very humbled and very gratified that I got to see a lot of the changes that you now see. And there was no I, it was always we, and it was always a lot of people doing a lot of good work. I mean, it really was. And it came from our staff at the county. And I think, the people on the front line, meaning those who clean the buildings and those who staff the phones, are just as important there's anybody sitting behind some desk on the third floor over there. But in those days, we had predominantly one building. It's now a courthouse. We were on the fourth floor. The jail was located right next to us. The public service building was really an idea, but it hadn't come to fruition. The Walnut Street building, for what you know as land use and transportation, was a yard out in more than just a yard, a large lot out in Hillsborough on River Road, where we stored all of our equipment and had some old sheds, and that was the land use and transportation. So we had a lot of building to do. We did that. I had the great honor and privilege with my colleagues of going over and buying across the street. There was a lot of interest in staying on the same street as the courthouse, but we crossed the street, bought those properties. I was there when we broke ground. I was there when we opened it up, and now it looks old. And in those days, you may not have known, but it was a collage of 3 different governments. It was actually the building was owned as a condominium between the county, Clean Water Service, which was USA in those days, and the city of Hillsborough. So today, you can't imagine those 3 entities fitting in that building, but we all did because we were a lot smaller. And gradually they all left, and you know what Hillsborough did. They're on the corner. They have a nice, beautiful new building, and went out and built a new building out in what I call swamplands. Pretty building, but lots of critters and lots of problems out just south of Hillsborough for Clean Water Services. We also knew that we desperately needed a jail, built a new jail. We built Harkin's house. We built
Harkin's house. Say something about Harkin's house.
Say something about it.
Yeah.
What would you want to know?
Well, you mentioned Harkin's house. What does it do?
What do they do? Well, they do. We also built community corrections, and Harkin's House is a facility that is for folks who are trying to keep them out of incarceration, much like the community services. But they're youth for the most part, young people who they're right there in Hillsborough, and it was meant to be a diversion program, and it still is today. It's still there. It's not very big. We still divert a lot of youth to Multnomah County. So anyway, that was all built, and we did that with some debt, but not a lot of debt. The board's philosophy was that we were going to be a contract county, and we contracted with what you now call community-based organizations. In those days, we just call them nonprofits, and they did the majority of the work for a variety of services. And we thought that was a good bargain when you compare the cost of service. And so that was how we operated, and up until about 5-6 years ago. And we got in the business of really providing all of those internally. And so our staffing is shot up. We're about 2,700 people, employees at this point. Where in the old days, we were down 1,900, less than 2,000. So it's a different operational mode and how we're operating. We did some interesting things. I had the privilege and negotiated with Intel on behalf of the county, and that was an interesting process of telling them what we needed to have, much to the chagrin, I think, of some others who said, if you tell them what you really need, they'll leave. And I found that they were business people and they respected us for doing it. So what we really negotiated, and there were a lot of people who didn't like it in those days, but it's personal property. And though you can't see me and I can't see you I see Bruce and I see just one other face, and that's it, I guess. But personal property is what businesses pay on their desk and on their chairs and their computers and all the rest. And with somebody like Intel, they might have on the size of a desk a $15 to $20 million piece of equipment that's only going to be good for about 18 to 24 months. And so they said, we really can't afford to pay those kinds of dollars. And I said, well, but you can pay the same thing that every homeowner pays, and that's full freight on land and full freight on building. And I said, that would put you in exactly the same position as every homeowner. And if you can't do that, then we can't make a deal. And so, well, you're letting us, if we walk, you've just lost a lot of money. And I said, well, if you don't do a deal like this, I haven't done my custodial responsibility. And that was important. And so we found that they flew in their corporate jets and their attorneys. And by the time we were done, I found them to be just great people who genuinely appreciated the candor and sincerity. And to this day, I have nothing but high marks to say. So that was interesting for me. We also negotiated with Nike, and I don't think it's confidential anymore, but at one point, Nike was going to leave Washington County, and they were looking at sites in Portland. They really didn't want to go there, but they thought that they needed a different presence, and they had a rather interesting relationship with the city of Beaverton, and they wanted someone to assist. And guess what? They never asked for a tax break. The only thing they asked for was, when we start building, we want to make certain that you have staff capable of making certain we get our buildings in and we're sited and that things work out properly. And so we assured them that. And so now you see a world-class facility. And that's good. You've seen research expand significantly down in my neck of the woods, which I represent. If you didn't know what is District 3, it's basically the southeastern quadrant of the county. So about 80%, maybe 85% of my district, even though I have the second largest rural area, Jerry Willey has the one District 4 out to the west. But even considering all that land, most of my folk live in urban cities or unincorporated areas. They're all bunched right in the eastern part of the county. But we found that we're quickly changing, which was interesting in terms of demographics, adding a lot of people and building. And if I had any things that didn't go quite as well, I don't think that, I mean, this is true of any business, and I probably would get plenty of arguments if you were unkind to me tonight and wanted to argue with me, but I've always said government's a business. It's just as a people's business. We do your business. And any business has the same problems when they have too rapid a growth. And that's what we had, just a huge amount of growth. My primary responsibilities up until about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, 5 years, was transportation. In those days, we didn't have, in fact, I cleared out my desk and have old pictures of getting, this large oversized check that brought the light rail from downtown Portland to Hillsborough. We didn't have that. 26, as you see it, didn't exist like that. The county put in money and state put in money. 217 obviously didn't exist. And most of the infrastructure that you see didn't exist. So what was done in the early days that I think was really good is we came up with a philosophy, a strategic plan that was recently updated by this new board. And what they did is they didn't like some of the language. They thought it was outdated, and it was. But the principles weren't really changed, and that was interesting. And the principle is regardless of whether you live in the city, the country, or an urban unincorporated area, you were going to get the same level of service. Everybody got the same level. And that was the piece that we made with the cities. And so with that piece, we were able to do some interesting things like the MSTIP, which are Major Transportation Streets Improvement Program. We were able to pass that, and many of the improvements that you see in all of the streets are all because of that. We were able to cooperatively work with cities in regard to a countywide library system, which I'm very proud that we have, and I know you are too, because you all probably were supporting as much as all of us. And though that was not originating when I got out there in 85, it happened a little bit before that, because I got one of the first library cards when I was a mayor. We were able to expand it, and we were able to convince the cities that it was a unified system, and that if you lived in Beaverton, that you ought to be able to check out things in Hillsborough or Tigard and turn them in, wherever, and they would you could order things at your local library. And so I'm really proud that we did that. I think it was a big plus. Probably more interesting to you, if not as interesting, as the CPO program. In those days, it was a number of CPOs. It was underfunded, still is, but it was underfunded and underappreciated, still is. And there's some changes, and I know Bruce, you and I have talked about that, and if we can get into that in a moment if you want.
We will. Yeah, that's certainly on the agenda.
Yeah. So I'm pleased that we have a strategic plan. I'm pleased that we got some levies. I'm pleased that we had some great opportunities to do some wonderful things. And we together, and that's the citizens who were kind enough to elect me 10 times here and 4 times down in Tualatin. I was very honored and blessed to have served those folks and been selected. So that's the good stuff. I mean, there's bad stuff too. You asked me not to talk about that, but I'm happy to get.
I didn't say don't talk about it, but I
okay.
wanted to have something that we can be proud of. Virginia, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear a little bit about your view of the whole situation that got us into having so much urban unincorporated. Was there concern in early days to try to get the cities to take on those urbanizing areas, or take us back in the time machine to this early time?
Very good question. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Virginia. And I appreciate all that you've done on the CPO program and in Washington County as well. Yes, when I got there, it was a large urban unincorporated. It's grown, but it was kind of historical. Everybody felt that they didn't want to be part of a city, and there was a lot of cost factors that were there. When we did our first strategic plan, we were under the assumption that everything would probably incorporate in 10 to 15 years. Well, that was a long time ago. It never happened. And I happen to live, I'm talking to you right now from, though you can't see me, from my home in Bull Mountain. And I'm in an unincorporated area, though everything around me just about is incorporated. I'm an unincorporated area. The thought always is that we're going to have to come to some reconciliation as to how services are provided. And so some of us, and you can throw things at me or you can say I was wrong. That's fine. We all make mistakes. I believe that cities probably were the best long-term choice for many people, but there had to be other things that we provide in the interim. And so that's when we formed a number of districts. That's when you saw the enhanced sheriff's patrol district. That's when you saw the urban, we tried it rural, but it never got funded, the urban road maintenance district. And we said, give people options. I've always said, and you again might disagree, and that's the essence of, I guess, what we all do is we can have differences of opinion, that we can afford to do what you all can afford to pay for. And if you have unlimited funds, that's wonderful for you. And we can accomplish that. But I've not found that, at least in the district that I represent, and there isn't. And I see Jim Long, I don't see his smiling face, just like he doesn't see me, but he would probably agree. He's been down in this area before, and he knows what it's like. And I see Jill Warren on the line too. People don't have unlimited sources of money. And so we needed to provide opportunities for people to do what needed to be done. And we formed those districts, and they've been successful. And some of the cities have said that has been a problem, because without those unincorporated areas, Virginia would have went to the cities a long time ago. I'm not so sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that county is going to have to reconcile. That's one of the problems that Bruce, you told me not to talk, and then you said I could, but the whole issue of how they pay for services, they're going to have to evaluate. And they're calling that an urban service study. We did them. We never could find how to reconcile that or get to the right balance point. But I know the county is going to hire consultants and to take a look and see what that full cost of amount is for various areas, whether they'll take and try to parse it up into various areas in the county and say if you're in certain areas you pay certain amounts and others you pay out, or whether they're going to try to do something across. I don't know. That's one of my regrets. I didn't get that solved, but when you leave, there's always unsolved issues.
Yeah. So you're talking about a countywide service district that would provide the unincorporated area with collectively with the urban services that we need. Is that more or less what you're saying?
You've got the essence, but I'm not so certain, Jim, that it would be. I meant Bruce. I'm sorry. I was looking at Jim's face, and I said to you,
That's good.
Bruce, I'm not so certain it would be countywide. There's some
Oh.
discussion that it might be parsed, and that's what I was saying, up by area. So, in the Cedar Hills area, it might be one amount of money, and in Metzger it could be another, and who knows? Bethany, it might be another one. I don't know. That's to be decided. The county, one of the things I regret, and those of you who know me know that I do this for a living. I'm a CPA. I have a specialty in municipal finance, and I've done a long time. So I know what the accounting is, and I know what the issues are. And I can tell you the county has some significant financial issues.
Yeah. So Fran, you got your hand up.
Thank you so much for coming by tonight, Commissioner Rogers. I could still say that for a while. I just wanted to remind you, the first time I met you was 25 years ago when I was working on what we call the high growth communities transportation. Now it's the Southwest Washington County transportation issues. And we're still working at 25
Yeah, around the mountain. Remember? I remember that. And I agree with you. I thought it was a good idea.
And you were really great and supportive. You were my mentor. And
geez, thank you.
So my question to you is, if you had a crystal ball and you had any one really important or good thing that you would like to see Washington County achieve in the next maybe 10 or 20 years, what's the one kind of thing left undone that you would really like to see, and maybe we as a community could pursue that?
Fran,
thank you and happy holidays.
Can you make it more than one?
Well, yeah, you can have two.
I might even pick three if you don't mind. But
three.
One thing, the county is going to need to decide what they want to be when they grow up. They have to do that. In the old days, we were kind of like a super city, and we were providing services, and that was the whole genesis for the various special service districts. And now it has evolved into a social service organization for the most part. And I'm not making any judgment about that. Things change. It's looking more like Multnomah County, but that's a very expensive proposition. And so that's really what has taken our budget up. So they're going to have to determine what they want to be, because they can't afford to be everything to everyone, just like I can't in my world, and you probably can't in your world either. None of us have unlimited funds, so they're going to have to do that. Secondly, they're going to have to understand the dynamics, that every one of you to understand that there's two ways you balance your budget. One, you take in more revenue, or you cut expenses. I mean, and I've been told that the combination is probably not the answer. It's to raise more taxes. Well, I think there's somewhere in between is the truth. People will drive 5 or 10 miles out of their way to go to Costco to save a few pennies on gas. And I can't be convinced that they're going to spend, as I've been told, any amount of money that we ask they'll spend because you want services. I don't think that's probably too truthful. So you're going to have to balance the budget. Third, they're going to have to understand and look at how they're going to cost services. We just talked about that, and that's what Bruce and I were engaged with a minute ago. How are you going to charge, and what's that look like, and what say are you going to give the public? Do they get the menu, or do they just get told? I mean, to me, I've always believed in the menu approach. If we all go to a restaurant, you might only want to buy this, the senior menu item, which I can buy too. because that's our budget, or you might want to have, all kinds of drinks and desserts. And I mean, it depends on what your budget is. So I believe in the menu item. And then there's a little sleeper one that I didn't get done. I was hoping to get done, and that has to do with clean water service. And it's just going to be pretty, maybe odd to you. It'll sound odd, but it's not meant to be. Clean water service, when I got there, was a sleepy little sewerage agency, and now it's a world-class organization. But they're out over their skis in terms of what their ability under the ORS is. They're organized under organization ORS 451. Let me restate that. They're organized under 451. And if you go into the statute and you read that, all of the wonderful things that they can do are somewhat inhibited because of that statute. They're the largest special service district I've seen that wasn't a separate board and a separate organization. They're all part and parcel under the county. It's something that needs to be looked at, because I think innovation is with us, and I think that the great things that they do in water quality is important. But they know, I'm not talking out of school. I've said this in meetings, and they know it as well, that they've got some problems legally in what they can accomplish under their current statute. And so they're going to need to look at that whole model and governance, and it's important they do that. So I'm sorry, Chair, I said 4 things. You told me one.
You can take 5 if you.
No, I could go on, but I won't do it.
Well, it's a great conversation. So, yeah, I'm sort of swimming around here. Did anybody have any questions, kind of comments you'd like to levy? Anybody in the attendees out there have any? Gretchen.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, Roy. One of the issues that I have seen over the years is as far as citizens in some of the jurisdictions are concerned, the difficulty of working with clean water services and the perception that the board doesn't really have time or energy to really do a good job of supervising. Have you thought that it might be a good idea to have a separate board to oversee clean water services?
Gretchen, that's exactly the point that I probably wasn't making as well as I should have, but that's exactly the only way it can go. I mean, you take a look at their budget, and they're spending 250 million to 300 million. I mean, there's what, 2,200 maybe different governments in the state of Oregon. Most of them are tiny compared to that. I mean, we have service districts bigger than that, but
yeah,
it definitely needs to be done that way. When I first got there, the clean water service, Gary Kramer at the time, he was not even sitting at the table with us. And so I invited him up, which was a very big surprise. And I started saying, we need to incorporate. For years and years and years, I was the only one who would attend their events because I thought it was important. I mean, it was costing money. And I guess I'm nerdy enough to believe that if it's costing ratepayers money, I need to know what's going on to see if it was. And I came to the conclusion that, are they expensive? Yes, but we were slapped with some federal requirements because we had what they call TMDLs, which is the amount of phosphorus in the water was more than was acceptable. So we had to go into secondary treatment, which we can get real technical here real quick, but it got to be very expensive and cost us all a lot of money, because we have a river called the Tualatin we discharge into, and it has a flow that the Mississippi, for those of you who've been there, and I think maybe many of you have, looks like a raging torrent of a river compared to the Tualatin. And so we just had a lot of requirements. I think that they've done reasonably well, but I think it's a very technical arena that you need people who pay a lot of attention to it. And so, Gretchen, you're 100% right. You're absolutely right.
Would you be willing to advocate that point of view after you're off the board?
I have already been advocating it while I've been on the board, and we've made the case, and I think people are looking at that. Maybe make some sense, but it needs like a lot of things, it needs some addition. I feel bad. I'm looking right at you when you can't see me. I'm just this black blob. I don't know why, but yeah. But I think you've hit it right on the head. And if you want to do things that they're doing, like to me, I've challenged them, and I always say we. Here's where I'm going to say I, because I did do this. I said, my hope is that one day we only charge rates because that's the thing we do, but we don't need the rates. We'll make enough money selling services and products. And you can say, whoa, that's pretty aggressive. Well, technology, and I think it's possible someday with reuse water, with, I mean, we made a little beer, and I just saw something from the EPA. We had an interesting, fun little time with it. We couldn't get it to New Orleans where we were showing it at an international show. Had to drive it there because we couldn't get it out of Oregon and some of the licensing. It was crazy. But there's another entity. I think it's in. I can't remember what state. I'd have to look it up. But they're going to process it. Brewers love it, and you can say, "Well, why? Who would drink that yucky water?" Well, I'm going to tell you, and you probably already know this. There is no water that you or I consume that hasn't been consumed before. It just goes in the ground, and then we pump it up and we say, isn't that pure? Well, you can purify it to a greater degree than you can imagine. And brewers and others, they say that finished water is so pure. It's like a canvas for a painter. I mean, it's pure, not some piece of board that's been painted before and they're painting over it. I mean, this is pure stuff. So we could do that. We can sell fertilizer. We've talked about bamboo. We've talked about doing processing of lab tests. For many people who need tests, we can do that. I mean, there's a lot of ways to make money. And I think we ought to do that, but the 451 gets in the way. So
Are you
you mentioned
thinking of
selling.
privatizing it, or would it still be a public agency?
I'm sorry, Virginia, I didn't catch that.
Oh, are you thinking of privatizing it, or would it still be a public agency?
I think it should be a public agency, and I think that's what maybe Gretchen was talking about. But it's accountable. It's accountable to the public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned selling fertilizer. Is that the phosphorus that's taken out of the water?
Yeah, what it does, and some of you may know that. And in fact, my wife says, "Oh, yuck, you're taking that stuff out of the water." No, it's not. It's called stervite, and stervite is what happens to lines. If you get clogged arteries, as we all tend to do over periods of time, they go in and they rotor it out. I mean, that's what happens. That's we all have heard of that. With pipes and lines, you can't do that. What you do is you tear them out. It's expensive. You pull it all out and you replace the lines. Well, there's process that it can harvest that stervite into good fertilizer, high and nutrients, high and the kinds of things that plants will love. And so we can do that. But, and there's certain limitations to what you can do as a 451 governmental agency. And that's what I keep going to. And Diane knows this, and she's our CEO, and she's very smart. We've got a bunch of race horses that we've put some pretty heavy equipment lashed to their neck and tell them to plow the ground, where I'd rather let them run because they can really come up with some innovative concepts.
Mary, you got your hand up.
I do. And Bruce, actually, I have a question for you. Can we start poking Roy about the CPO program? And are we holding off on that?
Well, I was waiting to have the happy subjects before we jump into
Okay.
more challenging subjects.
Yeah, because I kind of feel like this is one that's not so happy because I feel like we're just getting beat into the ground over this. So,
well, Roy, I think that's about as good a segue as we're going to get to switch horses here. Could you kind of take us back through your impression of public participation that was designed by the Oregon State Extension Service and sort of the evolution that brings us to this point in time?
I feel a little embarrassed to do that in front of some of you, Mary and others, because you've lived as long as I have, and I know that you're pretty good at it. But let me give you my rendition.
That's what we're asking for.
All right, my rendition is that CPOs, and why I always supported them is because I thought that as smart as people who are elected think they might be, we're not any more clever than anybody else, right? I mean, we just put our name out, and so we needed all the advice we could get. And we have some very bright people out there who are in CPOs who can come up with a variety of answers and suggestions, some feasible and some not feasible, but it's a good incubator, I think. And so what's happened is with the advent of time, a few things have occurred. One, everything's gotten more expensive. And I don't know that I have any great suggestions for that other than we need to sit there and say, can we make it a little cheaper in terms of how we staff it and those sorts of things. Beyond that, there has been this belief that you ought to have a mission that goes back, and that's the modern day stuff I think that Mary's getting at, that the modern day stuff is, gee, we ought to appoint people to your committees. That's been talked about. We ought to take and decide who can serve and who can't. And we ought to take and somehow limit your charge to certain topics, all of which I disagree with. And I'm telling you flat out, I'm probably a minority one, but I disagree. What I do agree with is that we shouldn't have political conversations. I get that. That's part. I understand that. But I said this, and you heard me say this, Bruce. I'm pointing at you, or you don't know that I am, but I am. At a meeting not long ago, that I wouldn't want to belong to the CPO program because I think you're too hamstrung, and I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent should be that we figure out some sort of, and Gretchen, you were at the same meeting, that the program should be structured that you can be the eyes and ears and you can have some sort of free dialogue with people. And not the things that might be adjudicated. So if they're up at the hearings officer level, maybe not, because that's a bit of a problem. But if somebody comes in and says, I don't know who to talk to, but I live in the King City area and I know Gretchen, I just want to ask her a question. Now, she's a bit of a shill because she's a land use attorney, so I know she knows a lot more. But let's just say she's an ordinary person like me. And then she said, well, I want to talk to you because you're part of the CPO program. As long as it doesn't violate anybody's rights, I think that's a good thing. I don't see a problem with that. I really, really don't.
Well, I want to just jump in there and say that given the guidelines and the direction we've gotten, I have no idea what it is we aren't supposed to do other than engage in political campaigns. And even that is a little bit confusing. So, do you have a feeling for what it is we're being asked to not do besides be involved in political campaigns?
You came to our commission more than once, Bruce, and you asked that question as succinctly as you just did right now, and as well as you just did right now, and there was no answer. What I'm taking out of this is that there's a feeling that there should be control. It's all about control.
Okay.
That's what I get. That's Royce.
It's hard to tease the politics from the rest of our charge. I mean, sometimes it gets a little mushy.
It sure does, but
I get it.
A political campaign to recall city commissioners is clearly a political campaign.
Yes.
But politics in general, it's really hard to know what the red line is.
So CPO 1 has pretty good attendance at our meetings. I'm vice chair of CPO 1, and we did that by not focusing on subjects of great interest to a very small number of people. We'll support them, but that's not what we do. And we bring in the service providers under the guise of discussing quality of life. And so there's this conflation of we're being asked to advise the county commissioners on land use things, but not on quality of life, while we are still being encouraged to bring in the service providers, which are the quality of life issues. And so there's this confusion that there's no way we're not going to resolve it as the discussion goes on, but so you don't have a concise statement of what it is besides political campaigns that we're being asked to not do.
Correct.
Holy cow. Okay.
So it isn't just us.
So I was on the Behavioral Health Council, which advisory to human services for 30 years.
I remember.
And in that 30 years, checking with Kristen Burke, who was the manager for a good time, part of that time, was the advisory council itself did no specific advocacy that resulted in any changes. I also served on the ESPD advisory committee for 12 years. And aside from voting to support what the sheriff was wanting to do, there were no decisions that were driven by community involvement. So in the boards and commissions, the staff makes the agenda and the advisory committees validate the decisions, but there haven't been any serious issues driven by citizens. And the Urban Road Maintenance District is the one, maybe ROMAC, the rural roads, where the citizens make decisions about what is going to happen. Now, the CPO system is the only public-facing advisory body that the county has. And it seems that we should continue to be public-facing. And it occurs to me in this modernization program that making the CPO system the public-facing entity for all of the boards and commissions kind of has a spark of a good idea. This isn't about me, this is about you. But what kind of, when you think of how you've interacted with CPOs in the past, what has been the most valuable aspect of the CPO system in practical terms, in you making decisions that you can think of? How has the CPO system benefited you and other commissioners?
It's not necessarily my attendance or being there. What's been helpful, and I'll pick on Jim Long there a bit, or Kathy Stallkamp, or Gretchen, is when I hear ideas from the group about certain issues that are impacting their areas. That's what's helpful, because I trust that your voices are sound and that you're bringing good information. And so it's something we need to pay attention. Whether we ultimately agree, I mean, everybody can disagree, but it's information that should be had. Bruce, I need to make the point that just because I'm perplexed doesn't mean everybody else is. I just don't. There's a problem that I haven't sniffed out yet, other than one CPO I've heard got off the rails a little bit, and okay,
yeah,
that's a problem. I agree, but I don't think that we're using a sledgehammer on everybody else. I don't quite understand it, but that's my take. I'm short timer now. I told you my last meeting was today.
Well, I would dare say that everybody in this call is confused about what's going on and why. And since there is no overarching framework that provides us with a design that we're shooting for, we have a couple of things that were being, guidelines, but they don't relate to each other, and they don't provide any guidance as to how we're going to reconfigure the system. So I'm a little bit shocked for you to go to share with us that you're unclear as to what it is we shouldn't be doing. So Mary, take it away.
Well, I guess what this makes me realize is that perhaps we don't need better guidelines. What we need is better training, and that some of the CPOs that have gone off the rails have just not been properly guided by staff, which, I think staff has always played a very important role in kind of keeping us in our lane. And I'm not seeing that happen. And I'm just wondering why we have to completely upend the program just to put those guidelines back in place.
Mary, I would say this to you. You and I have known each other a long time. Our staff does an excellent job, and it's a lot of this is not necessarily coming from staff. I'll just leave it at that. But you know that, and I know that. I mean, they do a good job. They're doing the best they can with the resources they're given, and so.
So I would touch on the civic leader training program run by the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, OAICE. And when Philip Bransford came and talked at the CPO1, CPO7 joint meeting this month, he was under the impression that anybody in the community could apply and be accepted to civic leader training, when in reality, not only are most people excluded from the civic leader training program, when I have requested the curriculum from both the county and from the community-based organizations that design it, specifically Adelante Mujeres, we have been rather brusquely rebuffed. We don't get to, even though the CCI's charter is to review public participation plans and designs, we don't even get to see, we haven't in the 4 years been able to see what the curriculum is, to see what people are being taught, to see if we could add some useful perspective. And it's, I just, and Philip thought, oh yeah, anybody can get in. But if he is unaware of the severe limitations, then I should think that this is permeating the staff, which is responsible for this. And so I'll just leave that right there and go turn it over to Virginia. What do you got?
Well, I keep getting the feeling and our lack of specific reasons for what's going on feed into this, that it's what I've always been led to believe is a bad idea of rulemaking for a specific problem, making big general rules in response to a specific problem. And I keep having that suspicion that in part that's what's going on with this. And your not lack of understanding, but your puzzlement with the reason for all of this procedure kind of emphasizes that or feeds into it.
Sure seems to. Thanks. Fran, what do you got?
Right. So Commissioner Rogers, Roy,
Right.
I've been on the DCLD Community Involvement Advisory Committee for about 5 years.
What is that?
The SIAC, the Community Involvement Advisory Committee.
Oh, the LCDC.
That's a state.
Yeah, so we, for the authors of putting people in planning, and now we're going to be putting out a new program, which is equitable engagement for planners, so that they can have a checklist and all this other kind of stuff to help them do a better job on planning. And it's kind of like a one size fits all, meaning it's modifiable for everybody. So I know that you're leaving. I was going to ask you whether you plan to be involved with Washington County after you leave your seat on the commission, but we're trying to, I guess we're seeking your advice as to how can we be better, utilize our skills more, because this body knows a lot about land use laws, and we're trying to digest it for the general public in layman's terms and tell them, here's what it means to you, and listen to what they have to say, which is what I believe the CPO program has, one of the best attributes of this program. But I have not yet been able to get to speak with the strategic planner, Diane. I have not been able to speak with the OAICE officers from day one. They don't even open the door to talk to us. The big thing about putting people in planning, it says that your biggest bang for the buck is putting the community in planning up front. because you're going to save a whole lot of dollars downstream. And I'm sure you are very well aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very cost effective for the county if they help us to be more successful in communicating timely, accurate information to the community to avoid litigation, to avoid, all these other things. So I'm just asking you, what can we do? And maybe you might be willing to continue supporting the program even after your tenure is over.
Well, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record of supporting staff, but it's almost like a military that, people march along to the instructions they're given. So your access or non-access, I don't tolerate. I don't think that's good. You should have access. The causes of that are not necessarily the staff that you're working with, and so that's a problem. I was going to work on a couple of county committees, but I have been politely told that that's not possible. So I will not be.
From legal point of view?
Well, there's a difference between legal, let's say, and some other parties. So
okay, yeah. Okay, Caleb, what do you got?
Real quick, just wanted to say thanks, Roy, for your service. Really appreciate the foundation that you've set. And I'm new to this, but I really appreciate everything that I've seen that you've put in place for people like me to step into. So thank you. I also just wanted to make a note about it was mentioned about the leadership training. I actually was engaged in leadership training through Washington County this year. And that was through Unite Oregon.
Okay, good.
So I was engaged in that. That was through the county. ICA was there with us, and I'd be happy to connect you with that person, my contact at Unite Oregon, to get the curriculum if you'd like.
You plan on coming to the steering committee meeting tomorrow?
I have a prior conflict.
From 11 to 1?
Yes.
Okay, well then I will get a hold of you and have a chance to talk about that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Jim, what do you got?
Oh, I could ask lots of questions. Roy, CPO 4B has been inactive. What kind of effect does that have on the county making decisions, particularly related to things like this new, what's it called, Riverview Place or Riverview Terrace?
Riverview Terrace, yeah.
The other questions would be, we had a kind of an edict come down a few months ago, maybe in the summer, saying that any letter that we sent out needed to be recognized and reviewed and approved by the commissioners before we could send it. Another issue is our CPO 4M has had a good relationship with the city of Tigard. They let us testify extra, as does the county in some instances. And our relationship to cities is kind of being threatened here. Here, I live in a city. Does that mean that I shouldn't be part of a CPO anymore because I'm not an unincorporated area?
Jim, I can't answer that. If you read the 5 principles, it makes it sound that way, doesn't it? But I don't think that's necessarily true, but that's the way it sounds. Again, this wasn't my idea, so it's just what's happened.
Okay, one more question. How did the road get named after you?
You know that story, don't you, Jim?
No, I don't.
Oh, gee. There was Beef Bend was a road that went from Shoals Ferry, and then it turned right at Beef Bend Road there in Tigard. There was no interconnection to the Sherwood area. We wanted to connect that because we knew it would be substantial. In those days, again, I was deeply involved in transportation. I spent a lot of time in DC as well as at the regional tables, state tables, and we finally cobbled together the money to do it. And the commission at that time said, we want to name it after somebody who did all that work. And so that was a nice gift. It was a difficult time. My father was, I was back in 2001, my father was dying, and last thing I got to show him was a road sign. So it was
Nice.
kind of heartwarming. He appreciated it and I did too. So that's the backstory.
Well, that road certainly has been improved since it was first named because I avoided that at commute times like the plague. And I made a comment that we should have named it Dale Evans Road to.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, but I want to eat those words and say that it is a really smooth, well-designed road. It's the connectors to it which are really problematic, Tigard. And I don't know, do you have any suggestions? I mean, we got Fran around the mountain. Kind of, do you have any perspective on how to create a modern linked transportation system in South County going forward from this point?
It's problematic. That road's going to fail, by the way. You haven't seen it yet, but the reason it's going to is because River Terrace has got a lot more development you haven't seen yet. You've got all of South Cooper Mountain. You've got the city of King City. You know where the golf course is and everything's in downtown, but they're going all the way out to Roy Rogers. They're going to annex all the way out, so you're going to have houses. And then you've got a new, now approved development going to occur in Sherwood East, they call it. That will be along that road. There is no way that road can survive. So the difficulty is, and there was an extension, and I know that I still think there has to be something, and that maybe some would disagree. I know Ponzi's were a little disagreeing, but they were agreeing what my final position was. I didn't think we ought to run it through Vandermost. That was a terrible idea, but we've got to somehow snake through the backside of Tigard. There's nothing there now, and you can't just put it all on Roy Rogers. You've got to have parallel systems. There's an attitude that we can only have facilities that we can bike on, walk on. And I said, that's, with all due respect, that's sort of very Renaissance-like because I don't think I'm looking at all of you that I can see, and I doubt that you made the clothes on your back. I doubt that you made the office furnishings and other things I see. You didn't make the computers. You go out for groceries. You're not growing everything on site. So we have to be able to get goods in and out. So we have to have people who are realistic about moving things, and that means multi-mode. That means that, yeah, we need pedestrian, we need bikes, we also need buses, and so we've got to facilitate that. There's a ongoing dispute again between cities and the county. I'd hope that we'd tampered that down, but a variety of actions have spurred that again, not the least of which took money, which I voted against, and you know that, because some of you, we took money out of the MISTIP the last 2 years, and I didn't think that was right to take road money to balance our general fund. We took money out of the library the last 2 years. I didn't think that was right. And there was not enough votes to stop it. So that's another issue that I'm sad about, and I'm hoping that it will get corrected at some point.
Well, that doesn't leave me with a whole heck of a lot of hope. But let's turn to Gretchen. What do you got?
Do what now?
Hi.
Gretchen has her hand up.
I sat on the long-term transportation plan 2 different times with the county over the past days. In fact, I would drive Miki Blizzard to the meetings because she didn't have a car. But there have been some decisions that have been made in the past that I think were extremely short-sighted. And one was we allowed Beaverton to go all the way out to Tile Flat Road. And the reality is, in the long term, Tigard's going to go out that far. And we need to do transportation planning before they actually start building houses. And also require some significant commercial development. We may need a big grocery store out there when it's all said and done. But the bottom line is, I have felt that there's been resistance to doing future planning And an extension of tile flat is going to be critical. You've said Roy Rogers is going to fail. I agree 100%. We need to have an alternative path because the transportation infrastructure south of Cooper Mountain is abysmal. And I'd like your comments. Thank you.
Well, Gretchen, you and I aren't going to find anything to disagree with. It is, and it's difficult. Nobody likes the road in their backyard, but we need a grid system. We understand that. It's how it's done, and you have to have people who have a view to the future. Frankly, everybody I'm looking at that I can see, you aren't going to be around another 30 or 40 years. I'm sorry to tell you. Nor am I. It's a fact of life. It's a fact of life. And so I've always said that we ought to be planning for our grandchildren. We shouldn't be so short-sighted to believe that we're the only ones that count. And so you do that. And when I worked with Fran once upon a time around the mountain, I thought that was a long-term good solution to some things that we needed. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I think Gretchen, you and I aren't going to disagree. We need some things. We don't need Tiger to say, and they're good people, but they're saying you're not going to put any road through River Terrace. And how can you not put a road through River Terrace? I mean, it's just not. Or up on South Cooper, which we were just mentioning ago, there's a little bridge over a creek that needs to be made, and so we can get down to tile flat out of some of that area. And Beaverton said no, and so we're going to have a big long cul-de-sac road that just runs around in a circle. I mean, that's not good planning. I mean, it's just not. But people have their own ideas. It's hard. It's hard for people to understand that. I'm sorry, Bruce. I'm droning on.
No, this is why we wanted you here, is to have these candid thoughts. And Fran, I suspect you might have something to add to this.
Just know, Roy, that I am continuing to pursue this at a strategic level even, and I'm the pragmatic environmentalist in me is looking at the long-term impact to the environment versus the short term. My feeling is that people are not seeing the forest for the trees. So if you have any thoughts, I'd like to send something to you that I've been sending around to Metro and to various planners. One of the things that I saw is the city planners and the county planners and Metro are not all communicating with each other at the same time. And so we have a variety of different plans coming up, and that's part of the problem. But I will tell you that, what was I going to say, that I'm going to pursue it. If you have any oomph left in you, maybe you could coach me again, as we did last time we met on State Street in that little coffee place when I first met you.
Yeah,
I would really appreciate it, because I will fight this battle tooth and nail for the benefit of the entire community in Washington County.
Well, we have to understand we're going to lose some rural land. We have to understand we're going to lose some sensitive area, but that's the only way to protect this farmland that we get outside. I mean, if we're going to have that many people, I got to live somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm also, just so you know, I'm also working with Metro on what we call habitat opportunity areas, and it's specifically for transportation, identifying the very specific, most important areas to protect. And so I'm in that mapping group as well. And we should have some recommendations too, so that will help guide. We can't save everything, but we need to make sure that we save the most important stuff. So we are prioritizing from lots of different.
Sensitive lands are important, and we can all get along. We really can. We can figure a way to do this if we just work. But it seems like there's so much angst, and people are arguing about things, and it's so counterproductive. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Let's get to a yes and figure out how we do that. Yeah, that's what we really need to do. And that's the CPO program too.
Well, that's a sobering situation.
Can I say one more thing, Bruce, before you throw me off?
You're going to have to say that you've run out of time before we throw you off.
No, well, what I'm going to say to you is I greatly admire the citizens who are going to spend the kind of time like tonight. You've got other things to do, and you volunteer your time to do the things that are not real sexy and not real fun. You can certainly do a lot of other things, but
yeah,
I'm hoping that people don't go away, because once they stop being engaged, things don't work well, and bad things happen. The only way to make it so that everybody's boat floats, so to speak, is to continue to have people who are interested, not stifle voices, but engage voices, raise voices, and not yelling, but raise them to the point that you're listening and encouraging input. That's what really needs to be done.
That's what we're doing. So Gretchen, what do you got?
I had one quick question. You mentioned that they've been taking money out of the MSTIP plan. Do you anticipate that that is going to continue? Because that's going to really create even more problems down in South County than exist already. I mean, the issues with Beef Bend Road are going to be significant as both sides of that road develop. I noticed that the land that's on the corner on the Tiger side is now all up for sale.
Right.
And the development that's Kingston Terrace is going to do development on one side of Beef Bend, but then at the end of that development, it's going to go back to being a country road. I'm really concerned about the long-term impact unless this road gets in on the MSTIP plan yesterday.
How is that a quick question?
Well, it's pretty much a closed box.
She's asking how much would be lost, and it's about $3 to $4 million a year, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a nice little project. And because you have 4 districts and everybody's competing, so to speak, it's important that we understand where the money came from. The city supported that, by the way. That's the only way we got that MSTIP. And so they're a little chagrined that we're using it now for general fund purposes, and I was too. The same thing with the libraries. That was intended for libraries. It was not intended for general fund support. But again, that's, I could go another 40 years and I still would have projects that didn't get done. And so I'm disappointed there's a few things that didn't get done. And all I can do is ask for your help and others to say, let's raise our voices. I mean, some things are just not right. And if you think they are right, that's great. Then don't raise your voice, please. If you think they're not right, then, be engaged and say that.
Well, speaking of raising your voice, Virginia, what do you got?
I have gotten the impression through this evening that you haven't felt that your issues with the way this quote modernization plan have come together, that they've been heard. And I don't want to read too much into it, but can you discuss at all any like iterative process between the commission and the people that are attempting to make these changes?
Thank you, Virginia. I wouldn't
without making enemies.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to do that, nor is anybody. I don't think I've not been heard. I've been heard. Maybe people don't agree. That would be better. There's some long-term financial issues. I mean, we all can agree that we'd like lots of things in life. We all could agree if we can afford them. And at some point, there's people like me who are finance people who say you can't afford them. And nobody likes to hear that. Nobody likes to be told that. And so 3 years ago, when I said, you got about a $25 million deficit, I was not looked upon fondly. Found out I was wrong because I'd done that on a napkin. It was 28 million. We're 20 million this year. We're going to be 20 million next year. We're going to be 20 million next year. And guess what? In that budget process, we're not funding our reserves, and we're not funding what we call our CIP program, which is our capital improvement program. We're not funding those. So what's the solution to all this? One, you say, do we become originalists? And there's some thought of that. What does our charter say that we have to do? And that's what you do. And you right size, or do you go out for levies? But your levies are just not operating levies. That's what they're going to need. Also going to need capital levies. You got a jail that has problems. You've got a courthouse that you're going to need to build. You got other facilities that are problematic as well. So you're going to be looking at a series of levies. And so It depends on what you all want to open your pocketbook up and do. I mean, I don't know how much you want to spend. If you want to spend a lot, then you're in the right place at the right time. If you say, I think that we need to sit there and look and say, well, what would any business do? And you got Mary over there. I know her accounting background as well, and she'd probably be saying, let's sharpen our pencil. Before you ask for money, where can you cut? What have you done? And I've said that to ODOT as well on some of their projects. I said, before you go out and you ask for a lot of increases, what assurances can you give that we can all know that you've saved everything you have saved? And they point to their own internal audits, which, okay, I'm saying what externally. And then secondly, I said, what is your system? Is it too large to support? The county is expanded its number of service offerings. Not that they're wrong at all. I'm not saying they are. Nobody's saying they're wrong. But when you expand those, you've got to fund them. Have we gone beyond what we can fund? And I would say yes, unless there's new funding. It's just a matter of time. We have a cliff. There's a $27 million cliff. It's going to fall off next year, in addition to the 20 million that I told you about. You say, what's that? That's the Intel money. That didn't go on forever. That's falling off next year. Some of it. There's others coming on. With the AV, the way it'll come back on, it'll come out to about 12 million. But again, that's still, I think they're going to be down 30, 31, 32 million. Plus, they still not funded the CIP programs, still have not funded reserves. So I'm talking, about a lot of things that may be boring to some people. And I try to talk around the table, but it's bad news is never good news. Nobody wants to hear it particularly.
But you ignored at your peril.
Yeah, I think so.
Speaking of that, Mary, what do you got?
So, Roy, one of the things that puzzles me a little bit is the amount of growth that we've seen in this county. How many of the financial budget issues do we have because we've really outgrown our infrastructure, our just our ability to deal with the amount of growth? And it's we don't have enough housing. Our roads are just in horrible shape. And we still continue to push for growth. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. What is our future based upon having more growth to pay for our past financial problems?
Yeah, well, Mary, that's a great question. You know the answer. I know you do, because I know how smart you are. But it's a fixed levy, as you know, our rates and our levies. So we're not getting a whole lot out of that growth. But part of it is indeed growth. That's true. That's particularly true of the correction system. If you went and talked to the DA, or if you go talk to the sheriff, they're saying, you keep putting people in here, we're arresting them and we're putting them in jail because it's the right thing to do. They need because of growth. Other things are because of added services. It's a combination. And I'm not saying any of those services is bad. I mean, any service you want to pick, we can make a case for, but it's a combination of both. There's a governance philosophy that's different amongst us, maybe, and that is that I've always said, if you're going to do things that add costs, you need to ask the public. Yes, I'm elected to make decisions within the parameters of the budget that I have and the service levels that I have. If I want to expand beyond that, but I can assure you, we've added many new services and we've not asked you about any of them. And so there's a combination, Mary. There isn't a yes, it's growth, or yes, it's new services. It's a combination of both. And it depends on the department.
But I think my question is more about, why are we still trying to recruit more business to Washington County? Why, with the CHIPS Act, were we so excited that we're going to have a bunch more jobs? It's like, don't we have enough jobs in Washington County already anyway? And won't these new jobs mean more services, more needs for road improvements?
Well, that was one of the questions I asked about the chips. I like new growth, like everybody. You have to have some growth, but the question was on the CHIPS Act, if you added that land, who is going to give us money for the roads? Who is going to give us money for the sewers? Who is going to give? And it was they kept emphasizing to me, as one small voice, that the businesses were going to pay for it all. Well,
No, no, that has never happened.
They'll pay for the abutting maybe, but none of you only go around your house or your neighborhood. You go out in everybody's neighborhood. So I said, well, we got more traffic on a lot of other things. So what are we going to do? Is the state going to backfill? Are they going to give us money? And the answer was no. And so you're asking a logical question. If one of the things that we had and we negotiated early on with the Intel project is something called gain share. The governor, and this is not the last two, but many back, said, well, boy, you need to cite that. That's wonderful. We got a lot of pressure from the state. You got to cite these things. We said, well, it's good for you because you get the income tax. We get nothing. We got to put in all the facilities. We got to, do all this work, and we get no property taxes out of this thing. So we came up with a thing called gain share. And what that said is give us part of your income taxes, because that's a windfall for you. We got that, and like anything, it's like the salesperson who goes out and is told if they'll get this commission if they sell so much. Well, we did a good job of selling, and the boss said, I don't like that anymore. We're paying you too much. Yeah, we're making money, but we don't want to pay it. So we've been cut down. It's been questioned in every legislative session whether that should be continued. So there are some mechanisms to claw back, but it's got to be clever. And I really give credit to our staff and a lot of folks who really thought this through on the early ones. Later development, you can make the case. I mean, you can say, well, what are you getting out of it? If somebody comes in with 100 jobs, but a lot of infrastructure needs, what are we getting? Taxpayers getting a bill.
But as taxpayers, is there really anything we can do to discourage additional employment in this area?
Well,
do we have to rely on our elected people to carry that message forward?
Well, that's a tricky question. It's a good one. I mean, you guys, I expected I would run into a lot of good questions, and that's an excellent one. I mean, the chambers are involved and for good cause, and there's a lot of people good. Nobody is making the economic case at the level of the citizen. That's what you're saying. And
well, too, and urban unincorporated Washington County doesn't have a chamber.
Well, that's arguable, but okay. Like Aloha does. It has either the Greater Washington County or Beaverton, but yeah, it's arguable. But I understand your point. I mean, that's one of the frustrations. That success isn't. I mean, how much money do you need, and how much do you have? And when you get too much of a good thing, what does it mean? It doesn't help, when you got lots of needs and everybody wants to use your services, but nobody wants to pay for them. I mean, it's those remaining. So I understand the arguments. There needs to be some productive way to do that. So when the county, Bruce, as you as the chair of this organization, I guess I don't know how you remain that or how you get appointed or whether it's going to be the county board in the future. It probably will be who appoints somebody, but whoever is there, it would be interesting to be having some of your members be part of any studies that they have regarding urbanization costs, urbanization calculations of funding. I mean, all of that's, I think, important. And you have a lot of smart people here who have some really good ideas. And so I would certainly encourage you to make your voice known to, gee, we have some things to offer, because I think you do.
But is that a political discussion that we're not going to be allowed to engage in? Thank you, Roy.
County politics.
Mary, you know the answer to that as well as I do. I don't know that answer. I'm not sure that some of the board gets a lot involved because they're not asked either. So, yeah, it's a really good question.
So
thank you.
You were asking.
Dale Fike has his hand up in the attendees. Dale, what do you got?
Can you hear me, Bruce?
Yes, we can. You're coming through.
Good. I apologize, Roy, for not coming to your last board meeting today. As you know, I've been a regular attendee of the Clean Water Services Advisory Committee and the board, and you and I have met and talked, and we each respect each other, but become but we come from different political points of view many times. And so I lean more toward what Mary is saying is, many times large industry ends up creating more debt than benefit from a lot of the stuff they do in the way of infrastructure. So I just want to say I thank you for what you've done. I appreciate listening to you and your analytical ability and your ability to persuade and listen and persuade. So I just say thank you. I do think it's important to get involved in the political thing, especially with Trump being elected. And as you know, I have the last 2 or 3, 4 times in my comments to the county commissioners, it's been political. And because what Trump's going to do is really up in the air, how that's going to impact local governments, county and city. And I've got involved more in the city government lately than as well as the county. So I know that you supported Trump. I mean, you told me you did that. And so, and I'm a total anti-Trumper, just based upon him as a person and also who he's selecting as his cabinet and what he's doing. So I think it's just important that we have very sound regional, county, and local government. So I'm in support of anybody that's working for the common good. And I know based on what you've said and done, you've done that. Sometimes we come from different points of view. So I just want to say thank you, Roy. Appreciate it.
Well, Dale, but right back at you. You and I, when we had that discussion, I said I had a real difficult on that election. I had to do a lot with pocketbook more than anything else. But I appreciate you've been a consistent voice at the commission. You have brought different points of view, and we all learned. You and I have had dinner and talked about those, and I think that's important. I think what you're talking about and what Mary's getting at, but she's not putting in these words, is an economic scorecard. I mean, it needs to be a balance sheet of sorts, and she knows what that is, being an accountant. And we almost need to look at that and say, okay, what does this mean? Nobody's keeping score that way. I mean, the score is, well, how much revenue they're going to generate. That's one issue. Another one's how many jobs. That's another issue. Nobody's taking a full balance sheet of, well, what are the costs? And that's not only economic, but it's also environmental and a lot of others. So if a clever bunch of people could come up with a scorecard that was easily supportable, meaning that it made sense and it wasn't politically involved, I think it'd be good. And so, Dale, I won't comment beyond that, but I think that's exactly why we don't talk about politics at these sorts of things. It's important that everybody have their own thoughts and vote the way they do for a variety of reasons. And I've never found that either party was right on much anything. It's always been in the middle. Always been in the middle.
Thanks. Thanks, Dale. Gretchen. Unmute. Unmute.
Oh, sorry, I failed to unmute, excuse me. It has been my experience that there hasn't been a lot of pressure brought upon cities to take jurisdiction of county roads, and that's a tremendous amount of maintenance that the county is responsible for. Is it time for the county to more actively encourage cities to take jurisdiction of roads that are within their city limits, to take over control of those roads and get that out of the county's work plan? That's one. Secondly, is it time to reevaluate the policy regarding not really forcing people to annex to a city? Again, I'm just saying, in this budget situation that the county finds itself in, this may be a time that it's time to look at those two things. Particularly, it's really easy to do the roads. I know while I was on the council in Tigard, we took jurisdiction of almost all of the roads that go through the city of Tigard. But I'd be interested in your comments.
Well, ODOT has the same problem, and there's a lot of roads, like in Tigard, for instance, if you want to bring that one up, Hall Boulevard was never taken. Just recently, after the city extracted a lot of money out of ODOT. Bull Mountain, the city of Tigard got a tremendous amount of development fees off of these developments, but never put a nickel on Bull Mountain. Same thing happened on Beef Bend. So I'm not picking on Tigard. We can go right down the road and do it in Tualatin or where else, but it's a touchy issue. I mean, where I live on Bull Mountain, we pay for everything. We even own the road out in front of us. I mean, we don't have, the county doesn't support us at all, or even the city. So I don't know that one size fits all. That's the problem. I think that every neighborhood has their own issues and concerns. I think it's fair that we pay our fair share, whatever that is. I mean, I fully cost it, but your ideas are good. I mean, that discussion needs to be made. We have what we call orphan highways. That's a term used in transportation. That nobody wants them, and so they're not maintained. We need to look at that. I think we have orphan areas. And Jim would probably agree with me that Metzger's always wanted to be remaining completely apart from Tigard, and Tigard's always wanted to be completely apart from Metzger. I've never seen two people who were wanting to run in polar directions opposite, but you know, they seem to think that the other one wants them and they don't. Years ago, we used to talk about you know, areas left behind. We call it pockets of poverty or others, which may not have been good terms, but that was the jargon of the day. There are areas that are going to get left behind if we don't find some creative ways to support that. I mean, if everybody says, well, I'll pick on Aloha, which is a good example. I mean, they're looking now at vast areas that they said we can't afford to do these things. Well, one of the reasons people moved there was because it was more economical at times, and so they did that. And now with our road structure, the way we're doing it and analyzing, we're saying, well, these areas are disadvantaged. They should get some preference on road dollars. Well, it was one of the many issues that maybe I wasn't very popular on. I said, I'd again go back to our mantra that everybody gets the same level of service throughout the county. If you choose not to put sidewalks in, if you choose not to do these things, I mean, you've made that choice. Should the others who have already made the choice too, should they be paying for yours as well? And so I don't want to leave them behind, but at the same time, we have to be realistic about it. So I mean, we could talk all night. There's so many issues that are unsolved. I think that we need something broader than 5 people who think these things. The last thing I'll say, and I better let you go. My wife is feeling a little under the weather, so I told her I wouldn't be too long. But I'm disappointed that we went full time. That wasn't what I wanted. I was the minority of one, but I don't think it's broad enough. And the examples that I was given as well, it's too much work and people can't afford to come down there and do it during the day. And my solutions to that was have your meetings at night and have them on weekends. I mean, look at, you're all meeting tonight, so do that. What's the magic about 5? Let's make 10 or 12. I don't care. Make smaller districts and have people meet at different times where, you know, you could have more engaged people who are at off hours. So, you know, our salaries went up roughly from, I didn't take it, and many of you know that, so I'm back at the old days, but I mean, a salary for the commission is about 36,000 plus all the benefits and they have an aide and all that. And I don't begrudge them. I mean, if that's what they do, but I don't know that that's a participation that everybody can have. Not everybody can give up their job and say, I'm going to take a risk that if I get elected, I give up my job, and 4 years later, I hope my job's around or that I can find another one. You know, I think we need to figure a way to engage people that can come from every walk of life, and it's just not all folks who say I'm a professional politician. There are people who are, everyday citizens, and I think we can affect that. I mean, Portland's going through their experiment with 12, and I just think 5 may be a little crowded, and having meetings only in the daytime is difficult. I understand that. I mean, that's nice for those who think of their jobs as more 8 to 5, but how about ordinary people who have, jobs that they got to go to? They can't always take off and go out and speak. That's why you get crowded one night a month meetings. So I think you could have more nights. And what's wrong with a Saturday? I mean, if people want to participate, heck, I came up through the volunteer ranks and we were doing all kinds of charitable stuff on the weekends. That's what we thought we were doing. I mean, that was what it was all about. So I know that's very alien. It's a very strange concept, and everybody thinks I'm crazy as a hoot because I've heard that over and over. But I just don't think that we have the right, maybe the right structure for the future. That's what I would say. My comment.
Well, Roy, I think that is about as pithy a Jim. You got one?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. I was looking for a reaction thing here to say thank you to Roy.
Oh, thanks, Jim.
Well, I think that we're all applauding you, and it's really refreshing to have such candid comments, and that puts the future in our lap, that the world is run by those who show up, and we're trying to make a resilient community around us. And how do we do that? And since you're giving us more questions than hardcore answers, I think it's entirely appropriate that we turn you loose on that and let you go take care of your loved ones.
Thank
you.
And
I will wish you a happy everything as you go about your life.
Thank you, and thank you for all of your contributions. You've made this place a much better place. This is a we, it's not an I on anything. So you guys have all done the work, and I appreciate it. So
thank you
for having me tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, okay. Well, we got hard questions and there aren't any answers. Any other things to talk about? Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have an agenda. What are we going to talk about? The modernization program. Yeah, Jim. Unmute.
Maybe I missed it, but were there any minutes that were sent out from our last meeting?
Oh,
Yes.
Ika sent them out, and Mary and I have I don't think quite doing the first pass. So the
Nothing to approve.
The goal would be to get them to you before Ika gets tonight's minutes out.
I saw them. I had my surgery on the 2nd, and I saw them and took a look and made a couple comments.
Did you send them to me, or?
I sent them to Ika.
Oh.
I'm concerned that all the committee members should be seeing them before the steering committee meets to approve them or go through them.
Okay, well, we will have them out tomorrow morning for November. Yes.
Actually,
okay.
I did send it to you, Bruce.
Yes, you did. Oh, who's this talking?
That was Gretchen. I sent them both to Ika and you.
Okay.
CCI.
Yeah, I have to admit that the weight of both the modernization program and the national scene has given me has been a little bit, I dare say, depressing. But that's no reason to deny you a chance to review the minutes. Okay. Unfortunately, we do record them, so the meetings. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so one of the things that I find interesting regarding the modernization program is I've been attending the Advisory Committee for Racial Equity, the ACRE meetings on the first Monday of the month. And the modernization program was presented to the ACRE committee. And the 5 questions were asked. And the response from the ACRE members was, "What's the CPO program?" And I think that is a good synopsis of how the modernization program is going along, frankly. So, Mary, what do you got?
Actually, I want to put my CCI hat on that evaluates public engagement. And I've been trying to get a hold of the minutes from the ACRE meeting, and apparently they don't get posted until the minutes get posted. It's very different.
You want the minutes?
No, I want to listen to the recording, but the recording is attached to the minutes when the minutes are posted. So with most boards and commissions, at least with the county board as well as planning commission, as soon as the meeting is held, the recording is posted to the agenda page. And I talked to Ika some about it today, hoping we can get some sort of consistency. But, you know, Ika's low man on the totem pole, and you know, will she actually have the power to get things changed? Is this something that we as the CCI should be suggesting as a change?
Good thought.
So
I agree with Mary.
yeah.
Do I need to draft a letter so we can talk about that at CCI steering committee tomorrow?
Yeah, if you have time.
So
it's only Christmas time.
Yeah.
So back in September, I corresponded with Sharon Gray, who's the executive assistant for the sheriff's office, and she said that the boards and commissions are being the minutes and agendas are on Granicus, which is a bit clunky for community members to find and navigate. The county is currently building the boards and commissions within iAgenda, which is what the board uses for their meetings. And so I'm curious if some of the issues that we face will be addressed when everybody is converted to iAgenda. And so, Ika, that's kind of a question for you, are you familiar with the movement to put minutes on iAgenda?
Yes, I am familiar with the move. I think we're still kind of getting the last little bit of the boards and commissions, but most should be transferred over, I believe.
And so that would be so they get transferred over one at a time. Could you maybe do a little kind of research on the status of that, and in January give us an update on the boards and commissions?
I could, or I could find someone that's probably better versed in it than I. So I'm happy to connect and get someone to speak about it.
Okay. So
thank you, Ika.
Yes. And Ika, you and I, when we have our one-on-one, can kick that around and come up with the most. I'm not sure I asked it fully. So
Bruce, does that mean I need to hold off on writing a letter until we find out more about the conversion?
I think so. I think that would be considerate. You know, the acre announcement goes out in the same format as the board goes out in the planning commission. And it seems like this august body would warrant the same kind of presentation. And I'm curious how that project's going along. So I would like to hear from anybody, and so let's take a poll. We could keep talking about the modernization program, or we could do CPO roundtable in the remaining 15 minutes that we have. Who would
we have any committee reports?
Committee reports? We could do that too. I'm not sure the Code and Ordinance Subcommittee has much to say.
That's been dissolved.
Yeah. I guess, sure, I'm just sort of winging it here, boys and girls. Should we do subcommittee reports? Jim, you want to, or Jill, you want to say something about the SNR?
Jim, you want to give an update? I mean,
901 and 902.
My mouse was a little slow. I'd be glad to give an update.
okay.
We met last week, and for at least the third time this year, the county's Zoom link did not work. So we had people frustrated. And since I have a Zoom Pro link, we went and had the meeting that way. So I know, according to things, that might be outside the public meetings law, but that's what the county gives us. People just were not able to access it. As usual, we start talking about the wildlife that we've seen. I'm not going to go through all that. On the agenda was a discussion of Ordinance 901 and 902, and the basic response was that we were disappointed. There were too many exceptions and loopholes in it. Fran made a statement about tree valuations that the ones chosen are not scientifically done, and more research needs to be done, and this could be a bona fide issue. Regarding SNR protections within cities, we discussed that. We're going to pursue that to a bit, but then again, we might be denuded and not be able to do things with cities. So there's obviously some connection for wildlife and for humans between unincorporated areas and cities. Travel corridors and libraries and post offices and a number of things. So there's some things we need to work on there. We have a number of things that we're going to look at in the future. One of our members, Nancy, who has been an auditor, said she wouldn't mind heading up an effort to try and get a better effort for monitoring, because we as citizens are going to have to continue monitoring the effects of the ordinances to protect significant natural resources, because obviously it hasn't happened in the past. So Nancy has offered to try and follow through with that and see what she can accomplish with the county. Are there any other additions for Jill or Fawn or anybody? Mary Lou, who is there? Okay. Anyway, that's it. But I guess one of the points I'm making here is the county Zoom links haven't been working at least 3 times this year. And in other years,
how does that manifest? Is that basically that people can't call into the established link? Is that
yes. Right?
Huh. All right.
Or the link fades in and out.
Oh. Fran?
I just wanted to add one more thing. So now that 901 and 902 have been approved, which is the next step is another policy called 897, which is to now modify the comprehensive plan for the area. And that's where the River Terrace, River View, and all the other stuff comes into play. So I'm now reviewing 897, which is the follow-on. Anybody's interested. So that goes through Bull Mountain and all that area.
Whoosh. It just doesn't stop, does it?
Yeah, it's
Fran,
always. Yeah.
I'd like this is Gretchen. I'd like to set up a one-on-one with you
Sure.
after Christmas.
Yeah. Right now
I'm
it's
still recovering.
Yeah, all these reports, staff reports, I mean, have been pretty short. They're just, we call it PowerPoint presentations, stuff like that. So they're kind of like approving it on the fly. It's just basically changing the zoning of that area because it was all blueberry farms and stuff.
I think the SNR committee is the only one that is meeting. Does anybody have any other subcommittee, anythings to say?
Transportation hasn't met since our last meeting, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's a kind of diffuse subcommittee anyway. I'm running out of steam, kids here. So, a little CPO roundtable. Anybody got a? So CPO 1 and 7 have been having joint meetings on subjects that are germane to both of us, and we both are in Commissioner District 2. So if the boundary proposal goes ahead, will be one, you know, the pressure will be one CPO. And that actually has been working out fairly well, in my opinion. Virginia, you got anything else to say about CPO 1?
No, I think we're going to go back to separate meetings for a while, though.
For a while, yeah. So CPO 3, anybody from CPO 3 here? I don't see. Was it? Oh, Ben. There you are.
Ben.
Not too much to report currently. We will not be meeting this month.
Any other CPOs? I don't need to go through all of them. Any other CPOs want to talk about issues that are going on? Jim?
We also will not be meeting this month. But I'm very concerned about the breakup of CPO 4 into CPO 4K, the Bull Mountain and Metzger, because Bull Mountain is not active at this moment. And we're trying to get something to happen to get them involved, whether they're getting newsletters from both 4K and 4M, something, because they have this great big development happening, and I'm just fearful that the county's not getting input that they should be getting.
Are you talking about the one just up off of Beef End Road going up to 150th?
There's a lot of things over there that are
need
some citizen input.
Jen, I've been making input on that one, partly because I live in King City now, but also I'm a former counselor and planning commissioner in Tigard. And so, yes, I have made several comments of concerns I have about their transportation plan.
Well, I'd like to see citizens more involved, and thank you, Gretchen, but I like to see more citizens have the ability to do that. So, reactivating 4B would be helpful. And
so, Jim, can you simply start covering those topics?
Well, we had discussed that before, and Amanda thought it was a good idea, but nothing has happened that way to send out our agendas out to BM Bull Mountain. But and by the same token, the King City people's agendas could be sent out there also, since we're neighbors. That way, people might get involved. They could Zoom in. They wouldn't have to necessarily travel the distance. So I'd like to get that facilitated.
Right.
Jim, we can talk offline on that.
Mary.
CPO 7 and CPO 6 are working on a joint meeting for March or April of this coming year. The max line where it crosses 185th is causing like pretty significant problems with the intersection that's just south of where the line crosses 185th. It's the intersection of 185th and Baseline.
Baseline.
And apparently, City of Hillsborough has put in a grant application, and Washington County is using MISTIP opportunity funds that will be used as matching funds if the grant is accepted. But we're hoping to invite City of Hillsborough, probably Washington County, because they control the functioning of the light at 185th and Baseline. So that's in the works, and I think it probably has interest to a lot of people beyond our two CPOs. So stay tuned if you use that intersection.
Isn't Beaverton just on the east side of 185th?
They're not too far away, but yeah, for whatever reason, City of Hillsborough has taken the lead. And what I have been told is that it's actually a grant for rail improvement. And apparently it's never been used for something like this, but people have looked at it and said, well, there's really no reason why it couldn't be used. And the idea is that they have an overcrossing for TriMet, so it wouldn't impact 185th at all. And for those of us who live around here forever, what's really sad is that at one point there was a bridge that crossed 185th, and it was deconstructed when they made road improvements. And that was prior to the Max line using that line. So
Fran.
Just a comment. There is a state organization that is offering, they have millions of dollars still left over for wildlife crossings. And so if you know of any projects that are impinging on wildlife areas that could use a crossing, I can send you the information for the application. That's just sitting there ready to go if anybody's got in a situation like that.
Dang.
Jim.
I want to speak up for the Thousand Friends of Oregon. Fawn and Jill and I went to their 50th anniversary celebration, and the first award they gave was to the Friends of North Plains Smart Growth.
Yeah, well deserved. Well deserved. They've won in court. They've won in at the ballot box twice, and they're moving on to other issues that are countywide. They're incredible energy. Save Helvetia's been working with them.
So is there an example of the countywide issue they're working on? It comes to your mind?
Yeah, the Senate Bill 4 land grab of the 373 acres. That looks like it's going to fail. Oh, well, every day we get closer to failing on it because the governor has until December 31st.
That's into North Plain or into Hillsborough, right?
Right. It's a growth of the urban growth boundary. Hillsborough already has 600 acres that they just annexed for industrial. That's more than enough. All the other projects have used a lot less than that. And they're depending on Intel. It was Hillsborough pressuring Intel to make that work. And Intel didn't get the piece that they wanted that went to New York. But the thing is that it's politics more than it is need or good land use planning. So we've been ready to respond to a bigger issue, but we'd also like to find ways to legislatively push back and make our land use laws stronger. And that's because already in Washington County, I mean, it's only been a blink of an eye in the terms of long-term planning. You know, if you think about centuries, and Roy Rogers was alluding to that. It really impressed me, you know, that we need to be thinking of our grandchildren's grandchildren, not just us. So 50 years is not a long time. And in Washington County, we've already used half of the prime farmland for urban use. So, where does that go? You know, do we draw the line? Do we keep that line? Do we recognize the incredible value that our farmland has for the future and for our mental and physical health? And keep it inside, because it can be done. Urban growth can stay inside that line. Anyway, so there's that. I should go on to CPO 8. We have a proposal coming up. It hasn't been filed yet, but for a 12-acre solar farm in Helvetia. And it appears that it's legal in terms of code, but in terms of one more of 1,000 cuts, it's not acceptable, probably. So, but we're still evaluating. We're trying to understand, you know, what they really are planning, trying to research what this company has done in the past, understand what the family's motivations are. Of course, it's an old Helvetia family, the kids of the kids who, you know, granddad died. You know, so we'll be seeing once it gets an application in the county, then it will become a live issue for us, but we're trying to be ready for that.
All right, thank you. And congrats on the award.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it's not to us, of course, but it's to folks in our CPO.
Okay, we have hit the witching hour here. And I use that with the most affectionate connotations. Anybody, witches being some of my best friends,
Right.
which includes some of you. Anybody have a last comment for the good of the order?
I do. I would just like to remind folks that the community survey is still open until the end of the month. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and fill that out. Thank you.
And if you have already and you have more ideas, jump in again. Anybody in the attendees want to make a comment for the good of the order? I appreciate the four of you sticking it out to the end. Bitter or sweet, I'm not sure, but it's the end. And so with the power vested in me, I declare class dismissed.
Night, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you all.
Safe through the holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Aka.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Ho, ho, ho.
Happy everything.
Yes.
Happy holidays.